So I have a video I'd like to make. I've been talking about Krugman a lot, and that's going to keep happening. Low-hanging fruit, I guess. It's not just that, though. It's not that he basically is saying nothing. It's also that people believe him. They think he's great. So I feel like those of us who don't agree have something of a duty to tell others that what he's saying is basically meaningless. And it really boils down to he's just the most famous Keynesian right now. So that's kind of why I'd concentrate on him. When you win a Nobel Prize and you win it by talking about Keynesianism, people should probably say some stuff about that. So I want to just talk about some general issues with Keynesianism here today, which is basically what I'm criticizing with Krugman. A few things. First, I have... Hi, Jen. Yes, hello. First, I have the incentives of politicians. So, a politician in our current system is not someone who really cares about what happens in 30 years. Right now, a politician cares generally about what's going to happen in the next 10 years. What's going to happen while I'm in my position. How do I get into my position? And how do I keep people happy while I'm there? So if you're trying to become a congressman or a senator or whatever, the long-term benefits and well-being of your country aren't really within your incentives. Part of this is that we attract the worst people into politics just by the accumulation of power there. And of course, those people who are attracted to the power are very willing and actually happy to increase the amount of power the government has. So this kind of multiplies itself. We get the first bad person into politics, and they create a system that's good for them. And because they create a system that's good for them, other people who would be bad politicians are also incentivized to joining. And eventually we have something like what the U.S. has right now, which it's far easier to count the people who are not terrible, horrible scumbags than it is to count the people who are. I mean, counting the people who are is just like everyone minus 10. I don't know the actual number, but it's not a big number. Apparently my cat just really decides that now is the best time to paw at the door. Well, she's going to get ignored. I hope you can't hear that. So, when we look at the incentives politicians face and how they only really care about what happens now, something like Keynesianism looks really good to them. Because my next point is the bump in the economy is temporary and the long-term effect is overall negative of a stimulus package. So when you go into debt, usually, to pay for something, or you increase taxes, you will divert the... Oh my god, this cat. You will divert your society's resources away from investment, and you will send them towards consumption. So, if you didn't have this, if you didn't increase taxes, or if you didn't go into deficit, say the taxes. If you left the money in the hands of a corporation, well, perhaps corporations aren't the best example, but I guess they work. I'm not a huge fan of corporations in general, since they allow people to insulate themselves from the consequences of their actions, but let's just go with it. So if Apple, I hate using Apple, but we'll do it. Everybody seems to like them. So if Apple has more money that they get to keep from their sales, what do they do with said money? Well, some of it is used to make the investors happy, which is part of the deal of them investing. So some of it's paid in dividends, some of it's used to buy back stocks, but a lot of it is going to be invested. Now that could be in capital goods that help them make more iPhones or iPads. It could be in more purchasing more labor, so that would increase the number of jobs. It could be in a whole number of different things. These investments are what will really drive your economy. If You invest money as a corporation that will create jobs, and jobs are what the citizens really need. Most of the stuff, like talking about GDP, is pretty irrelevant as far as the citizens is confirmed. Who fucking cares what the GDP is? Do I have a job that's decent? That's what they care about. And that makes complete sense. Your own income is what makes more sense for you to care about, as opposed to how much goods the country as a whole are making. Like that's not something that really affects you too much. So the cost of doing this diverts money from investment to consumption, and not only that, so that hurts you in the long run. But not only that, the bump that the economy gets is not even long run. It's like a bump for a year or two, maybe. Consumption doesn't really increase your economy, or build your economy. It doesn't grow your economy like investment does. So when you go into debt to stimulate consumption, you're going into long run or long term, you're giving something up to make your economy worse. It's kind of like the end effect here. And to know that in the long run, the debt is so the debt itself is not going to be worth it because, Jesus, this cat. So the debt itself isn't going to be worth it because the bump is temporary. And to those who are saying no, going into debt isn't so bad, you kind of have a bit of income from being in debt, so to speak, because every year the value of the debt lowers in compared to what it was before. So that's something that the government actually considers as income. But we know this is bullshit, because if this were the case, and going into debt actually made you money, why would anyone be lending you money? If I'm someone who's going to lend money, and I'm going to lend you, I'm going to lend you $100, and in return, in 10 years, I want $110. Would I be lending you that money if I didn't think that $110 in 10 years is going to be worth more than $100 now? No. Maybe I would if I knew you personally and there were other reasons that I was lending you this money, but from a completely business standpoint, no, of course not. I would never do this. So the idea that debt in the long run isn't really that bad because you make some money off it, so it's like basically the same thing, that's complete bullshit. Anyone who's lending out money will put their money where they can get the most for it. So basically, you know that they're not going to be losing money off this loan, so the idea that the government is making money off it or not losing is completely stupid. A third thing that seems to be quite common in Keynesian analysis is what's called the broken window fallacy. So the idea here is that if I were to go and break the window of some building, that would actually be good for the economy, because now there's more stuff for people to do. That is only a reasonable thought if you think that scarcity has been basically defeated. But the truth is that scarcity has not been defeated, and that it still exists today. Of course, you know this because money still exists. And because scarcity still exists, what breaking a window actually does is divert resources away from where they should be, or where they would be better spent, towards fixing the window. If I'm at Sobeys down the street and I break their window, instead of investing in something like a new till or hiring a new employee, they now have to spend money to fix that window instead. They do not have infinite money. They have only a limited amount of money. So the thought that breaking a window is good for the economy is beyond stupid. I don't really know how to I don't even know how you defend this idea. Like, this is the same idea as if you pay someone to do something that's useless, like Roosevelt when he was doing public works programs. I mean, he paid some people to dig a hole and paid other people to fill in the same hole, thinking that this would stimulate the economy, because then more money would be in the hands of consumers and they would go buy stuff. Well, sure. Again, in the short run, this bumps the economy in a way, but in the long run, you've diverted money from investment into consumption, which, as we've talked about, is not so good. So I guess the argument there is that it increases consumption now, but the argument is quite bad. And, well, real evidence, something most people don't seem to look at, would point away from it. And yeah, my last point here is higher taxes to pay for the debt and infrastructure moves society's resources away from investment and towards consumption. I think this is really important, and it is something that the demand side economists just don't really, they either don't get or they don't care. They seem to think that consumption is what drives the economy, and that if consumption is high, then the economy is good. But this just doesn't make any sense. I just don't understand how that makes sense. What does eating an apple or buying a new house when you already had a decent house really do for the economy in the long run? Nothing. No, it doesn't do anything. It makes your life a little better right now. Sure, that's true. But does it create jobs? No. Does it increase the number of resources in the society? No, it takes away. Does it really help anyone other than you? No. No, it doesn't. I'm not saying that consumption is bad. Consumption's great. I mean, you need a house, you need a car, you need food, you need clothes for your family. Of course, these things are all very important, but they're not what drive the economy. If you want to think of it, I'll put it like this. Consumption... when you consume resources, the amount of resources in the society depletes. It goes down. When you invest, the amount of resources in the society goes up. If I buy some machine that makes screwdrivers, I can use that machine to make a bunch of screwdrivers. I've increased the amount of wealth in the economy. But if I go and buy a cow and slaughter it for food, I have not increased the amount of wealth in the economy. I've decreased it. So the idea that increasing consumption will benefit the economy in the long run doesn't really make sense. I think this is probably one of the biggest things in Keynesianism that just is not going to work. I think anyone who's going to think about this in a really a meaningful way at all can understand that consumption is not how you grow, but we seem to have a lot of people who do not agree. So I hope you found this interesting or enlightening. If you didn't and you didn't like it, go ahead and leave an angry comment. I'll respond to all of them. I have only had one person bother to leave me one so far, so I'm definitely waiting for that second guy. And to be fair, the first guy was not rude at all. It was actually an interesting conversation. So yeah, I hope you enjoyed this. Hope you got something out of it. And if not, well, maybe the next one will be good. I'll see you then.